welcome to The Good Pod, where we talk about all things good in the Goodiverse, the Good Wife, Good Fight. Now we're talking about Elsbeth. Talking about Elsbeth Season 1, Episode 4 through 5. I am one of your hosts, Jason Reed. With me, as always, my co-host, Marissa Garza. Marissa, how's it going?
It's going great, Jason. I think I'm the Elsbeth in this partnership. I'm definitely like the one who's going to ask all the questions and drink Shirley Temple's go to.
I'm the Kaya who is just kind of going along with you and honestly getting the credit for all of the good things you do.
Yes, it's true.
So I'm just
It's
kind of
fine.
coasting. I'm kind of coasting on your coattails of like when you saw something like that podcast is awesome. Jason, you're on that podcast, right? You're like, yeah, I'm there. I'm doing stuff.
We couldn't do this without you.
Yeah, poor Kaya. I mean, Kaya's an interesting character. We'll talk about Kaya's journey this in these two episodes, where I feel like they want to get her more involved, but in the end, it was just like, what did you really do, Kaya? You didn't do that much. You gave like little bits and
Yeah.
pieces. So I don't know. We'll talk about
Yeah. She's definitely being set up for something. So I
it.
think these
Yes.
two might not have done something, but maybe something's going to, as the kids say, be cooking
Yeah, I mean, the word
in a while.
detective was thrown in
Yes.
her area, so it's like, okay, yeah, definitely. I think we're going on that journey. But listen, episode 4 and 5, we're officially at the midway point of the season because season 1 is 10 episodes, so we're at the midway point. I thought these two episodes were very different from each other. I think they had very different quality levels. I want to know if we're kind of simpatico on that. What did you think overall about episodes 4 and 5?
I think out of all of the episodes we've seen so far, 1 through 5, 4 and 5 are the weakest of the group that I've seen. I don't know if it was just I was in the hype from the first ones, but I do think that they are of two different qualities. I thought that the first one, Love Knocked Off, about the matchmaker, I couldn't believe that it was just done. I think it was a way to learn a little bit more about Elsbeth. Like she's talking about what it's like to try and, find friends and find a relationship and stuff like that. But it was just like, and bada bing, bada boom, you're arrested. And
Yeah,
then in the second one, there was a little bit more play. There were more variables around, and it kind of broke from the we're going to show you how the crime was committed at the beginning to we're going to show you how the crime was committed, but then also throw this curveball of having the ball girl be involved. And I found that to be a little bit more interesting than the first one. How about you?
yeah, so I thought episode 4 was the weakest of all that we've seen. I thought, why did we bring someone as great and versatile as Retta here
I
and
know.
not really use her to the best of her ability? She was barely there. She barely did anything that was fun or kooky. I feel like the thing is in these first 5 episodes, well, let's the first 3 episodes, all of our criminals were in different ways quirky and interesting, and they
Mhm.
had their own little idiosyncrasies. With Retta and also with Blair Underwood in the 5th episode, I just feel like they were just kind of ho-hum. There wasn't anything extraordinary about them. They didn't do anything too quirky or too weird. I think in episode 5, throwing Ashley into the mix really shook things up, and that was kind of our kooky criminal character for that episode. But episode 4 just didn't really give me much. The crime was pretty straightforward. Everything about that episode was very straightforward. It was really easy for Ellsworth to solve it. And like you said, the climax just didn't feel suspenseful. It was just like, oh, hey, these are these guys. I got them to fish the thing you actually used to kill the guy out
Yeah.
of the ocean, and case solved. We're done. It was like,
Well,
oh,
and at
interesting.
first I thought I was like, "Oh, are we trying to put Elsbeth in danger here?" Because Margot invited her over to her house and was like, "Look, I found this man for you, and let me hold this picture right in front of where you think the murder weapon is."
Yeah.
Like all of this stuff. Like I was like, "Oh my gosh, is Elsbeth in danger?" And then it was like, "Oh, the cops are here. Okay." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Whoa, okay, I guess we're done."
Yeah, and that's what I was waiting for too. I was like, is Elsbeth going to stick her nose in at some point and really get into danger from these criminals and be threatened? And Kaya and Wagner are going to have to come like rescue her or something. I thought we were maybe going to get down that lane where she's sticking her nose into and she's being one on one with these criminals a lot. I thought maybe there would be a point
Yeah,
where a criminal would be like, "Oh, you're on to me. I have to get rid of you."
I
Try
know
try
by
to
the
take
by the
Elsbeth out.
ocean.
Yeah,
Like,
I think those would be interesting things to kind of throw in there to kind of change up the pace of things. I'll say through the first 5 episodes, it feels very, very, very formulaic. It's got the same beats every episode. Not to say I'm not appreciating the performances of obviously Carrie Preston, who's doing a lot of heavy lifting in these episodes. But I will say it's just very rote, very formulaic for all these episodes. So episode 4, I was like, okay, weakest. Episode 5, I appreciated they tried to throw a new curveball in with Ashley. I thought Ashley was very fun. I thought Ashley was like what is her generational nickname? Is she a Gen Z? Is she a
Is she alpha already?
I don't know how old she was supposed to be, but she seemed pretty young. I was like, but you can also kind of tell that she was someone that was, a younger person written by probably an older person. I was like, yeah,
For sure.
you're throwing in all the euphemisms from the new age, but you don't really know exactly how to stick them in there. Like, oh, not me snitching. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, that's you can tell this is written by someone older, trying to voice a younger character. So that Ashley though was fun and interesting and gave us a new. I think she gave us a new comedic foil other than Elsbeth, because Elsbeth so far has been our main comedic person here, other than our criminals in the first three, which gave some levels of comedy. This was a someone at probably right up there with Elsbeth in the comedic department.
Yeah, I feel like I hear what you're saying on the formulaic aspects of what we've seen so far. I think that's definitely something that differentiates the series from other series that the Kings have made. There's and they said right off the bat, like, this is going to be a different show.
Yeah.
But there is part of me that is like longing for, like, I really want to start getting into the Captain Wagner stuff. I really want to start getting to know, like, why Elspeth is really there. Like, why was there just consent decree? What was the case? What is happening? Give me a little bit more meat to really kind of ground myself into everything that's play, because then I think these little formulaic things wouldn't be, it's not that they're annoying, but they're just like very expected.
Mhm.
And if there was something else there at this point to be like, oh, well, that could be connected to the Captain Wagner thing, or oh, that could be connected to the first case or the case that brought Elsbeth here, or oh, you know what I mean? Like, throwing in some other clues, for lack of a better term, would kind of just keep it more interesting for me. I do hear you on Ashley being comedic foil. I think she was really fun, and I thought it was a clever, like, um tension between the criminal and, like, themselves. Like,
Mhm.
before, the criminal's always against the cops, like trying to outrun the cops, trying to outmaneuver the cops. And at this point, there was kind of like the criminal's in the middle of two people and trying to outrun both of them and manage it all the same. And that I found fun.
It really was a breath of fresh air for this series that was feeling very formulaic, for the criminal to all of a sudden now have a partner almost foisted upon him, and how he dealt with that, as well as dealing with Elsbeth and everything else. I thought that was a interesting curveball to throw in there. I think it would be interesting to play more with the formula. Like, let's see if we then get a pair of criminals who have been on it together from the start, and see how that works. See how that Elsbeth can play one against the other. So I just want to get a little more variety in this formulaic show, and ways they can switch up. They can keep the formula, but I think adding variables into the formula will increase the entertainment here. Because through 5, I really want to see it getting switched up. Because that what they did in 5, I was like, okay, I see you, show. I see you trying to do things differently now. So let's do some more stuff to kind of ramp up the. Just because, I mean, honestly, the suspense in this show is almost non-existent, because we know who did it, we know how they did it, so we're
Right.
not we're not figuring that out. It's just watching our heroes figure it out, and watching our heroes prove it, which I think already puts the show in somewhat of a deficit as far as entertainment, because a lot of entertainment from these shows comes from who did it, how did they do it, and how are our heroes going to find out how they did it. Those first two are gone from the show, because we know that already. So I think you need to add more in order to keep my attention throughout the whole thing.
And if it's not going to come from the criminals, I think they can do more with the detectives in the situation. One of the things I found, especially in these two episodes, was like Elspeth was really running the investigation. And, like, that is not what her job is supposed to be.
Mhm.
Like, I'm worried for her in that aspect of, like, is she going to ruin her opportunity to be a dissent decree observer? I don't really know what her job is. Neither does the show. But you know what I mean? Like, will she blow it, basically, because she's not following the rules? She is observing, but she's definitely actively participating and kind of steering things in a way that they might not have been looking. And I'd like to see maybe more conflict between the detective and Elsbeth in that way of like we should go this way. That maybe Elsbeth can't follow every lead that she gets. She literally follows like every single lead that she has intuitively, and even goes as far as in episode 4, gets on a bus and goes and interviews people by herself. And I thought that was just a little out of character for Elsbeth in this role. Like if she was a lawyer, we've seen her do this on the other shows, but that's not her role in this environment. And so I'm a little confused.
She's turned into a detective. The lawyer tie and the lawyer name is tenuous at best. Like it's a barely there thread of like she they have it feels like they have to throw in the words consent decree a couple times every episode just to root us back into who she's supposed to be, but she's not following that at all. She's basically a detective, she's basically an investigator. Maybe they should just go ahead and do something within the show to be like, okay, you're just a detective now, okay, you're just that's just what you're doing, because the whole conceit of she's a consent decree lawyer is pretty much thrown out the window in every episode.
Yeah, did you ever watch Monk, the show?
But I've watched shows similar to a monk where you have this person who gets branded as a like consultant who gets paired up with a detective from the department, and they're there to bring a new way of policing or whatever the conceit is for whatever show, like a mentalist, like a castle. Those are all those type of shows where you have someone from outside of the law enforcement arena come in to help solve cases. And that's not the conceit here. The conceit here is that Elsbeth is just supposed to be observing to see if the cops are doing their job right. And Elsbeth has taken it way outside of those parameters and is taking it upon herself to investigate. Like you said, she got on a bus herself without Kaya, and Kaya's just like, yeah, go ahead, just do whatever you're gonna do. And just she just
Yeah.
goes and investigates on her own. Like that's not what you're supposed to be doing at all. The fact you don't have a cop with you is just totally violating what this was. You're supposed to be observing the cops, not solving the cases. And it's crazy to me how through 5 episodes, we've done this 5 times now, exactly, where the cops still aren't appreciative. They're just like, oh man, you really helped us solve all our cases. Can you help me on this one? Can you help me on that one? They're just like, oh, here comes Elsbeth again. But in our business, she is the sole reason y'all are solving these cases. I think you should be a little more appreciative and stop being so doubtful of her. Like we've gone through this 5 times, right? I think she mentioned she's been there a month at some point. Like at some point, you're like, hey, Ellsworth, do whatever you're going to do because you are the only thing helping us solve these cases because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So please help. These 5 cases are the 5 cases in probably hundreds or thousands of cases this precinct is getting. Those are the ones that are getting solved correctly anyway. That's another interesting like wrinkle here. So you think about it too hard, which you're not supposed to. You're like, these guys are just really not appreciative of all else with help. They're just like so annoyed by her trying to help.
Well, and they're a little inept because like there was that one
Very.
time where she interrupted the investigation of Ash or of the tennis player's girlfriend when she said I didn't give him anything that would kill him.
Yeah.
Like a detective should know to follow up and say like what did you give him? It we shouldn't have needed like Elsbeth to come in and like frame everything for the viewer because
Mhm.
that I mean they're detectives. They should know how to do that. But what I loved about Monk is there was such a personal story with him in that show. Is like we got like the show really invested in who Monk is, why he had OCD,
Mhm.
what mental struggles he's going through, all of that. So even though like the crime was very formulaic, like every episode would have the same type of beats and things like that, we were getting to know a little bit more about the main character of Monk. And I think here we're getting to know like breadcrumbs. We're not really like getting to know more about Elsbeth as a whole, which I hope turns around because it seems like she's got some, interesting things with her son. Her interior design skills definitely back on par. We have an office now with like her portal window
Yeah.
going on. But I'd love to see her try to get an apartment. Like for real though. Like for
Mhm.
real this time. Where is she going to live? What does it look like? Does she get to know her neighbors? Does her son come to visit? And what made her want to leave Chicago other than this opportunity? Because, I mean, we learn in this episode that she's from Peoria in Illinois. She didn't necessarily go too far from home from Peoria to Chicago. Like, it's an hour
Mhm.
and a half ride in a car. So I'm really interested to what, like, made her want to pick up and go somewhere else? You know, like there's just a lot of questions that I think they could put more time into. And if they start building that up, then it won't seem as formulaic to me.
I think that's a really good point talking about the personal life of our main hero here because like you said, we don't know where she lives. We haven't seen her go home from work. We haven't seen what she does after work. We keep getting breadcrumbed about Teddy. We haven't seen any calls with Teddy. We haven't seen the strain that apparently there is like in Teddy and Elsbeth's relationship. We know that they talk, but I think Elsbeth said at one point that it's still a little bit strained. He doesn't want to talk that much, but he does call and help her out. So I want to see what that dynamic is like. And I feel like we're going to get it at some point, but it may not be until like an episode 8 of 10 episodes. I think we got to remember this is 10 episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
This isn't 20 something episodes where they can really just kind of drag this out. I wish we could go at a faster pace with Elspeth and her life. So I think that's a really good point. Talking about the journey we usually get on these shows about our heroes, and we're not really getting that at all with Elspeth.
Yeah, or even like she's not even getting phone calls from friends in Chicago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I know like she might not have a lot of friends. I don't know, but like she would at least like someone could have had her number and like called in and she would have to kind of explain again like why she's out there and maybe there's a connection there. There's plenty of things the show can do and I'm excited to see if they do them. If they don't do them, we'll have much different conversations
Yeah.
going forward. I still have hope, but
Yeah. Well, we're
they're
we're
kind of
halfway
getting
through.
to that halfway point though. Like you were saying, it's kind of like, okay, the roller coaster has like climbed the hill. Like we got to start rolling now
Yeah,
until
we still have time. Do we want to kind of go through each episode and go
sure.
through the scenes and go through what happened in these episodes? Just kind of talk about how what we thought about the journey of these episodes.
The journey of these episodes. Episode 4 is titled Love Knocked Off. And this one did start a little bit differently than what we've seen in the past. We saw an introduction to Margot and
Mhm.
Lainey. Lainey is a rich socialite New Yorker who is trying to find love and has hired Margot to be her matchmaker. Lainey's must haves are very specific. This man has to protect the coral reef, have good teeth, and fly private planes. So
She's
Margot's got a tough job ahead of her.
she's very type A. Lainey is. And listen, when I first saw Retta as Margot, I was like, oh, I love Retta. Of course, anyone following Parks and Rec back in the
Yeah.
day knows of Retta. That's where she got her big
Future
break.
self.
Yeah, that's where she got her big break. And so I was like, oh, Retta's in this. Ray's gonna kill it. But like I said, they didn't really give her a lot to do here.
No, I mean, they made her a matchmaker, but then they made her a killer, like right away. It was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And also, did you find, okay, so we get introduced to these characters, and then like Margot is leaving Lainey's apartment. She goes downstairs and she's getting her parking ticket. And she
Mhm.
like attacks the cop like just by hitting her with the bag. I was like, where is this coming from? But
Yeah,
okay, we've established a pattern.
it was very left field.
But it did get her in jail where she ended up, meeting Dennis, who comes into play later. But we saw like a little bit of span of time. Usually, what we've seen in Elsbeth so far is just like the day
Mhm.
or two leading up to the crime, like a couple of things. But this was definitely, we had a 6 month mark, we had a year mark, we had some time here. And it comes time for Lainey and Gabriel, as this man is known, to like Gabriel's confessing his love. Like Lainey has found someone. They're so excited. They get engaged, and who's there? Oh, it's Margot saying that the goddess of love has answered your prayer. I thought that was a little suspicious up front.
I
I
thought it
was
was
like,
I
oh,
thought it
that's
was
a full
weird.
service matchmaker.
Right. Like, oh, she's like a sommelier. She's like a waitress. Like, what was she doing? It was just those two and Margot. I was like, okay, all right, third wheel, Margot. What's going
Yeah,
on?
like okay. And then we get the year mark, and this is when it's going to be their year anniversary. And Margot's kind of like, okay, well, we put in our time, but you can get divorced now because what's his face? Gabriel is in her house in the Hamptons and speaking not with his established Australian accent. He's speaking with a very New Jersey, New York type of accent. So we know something is fishy there. And she's like, "Look, okay, it's been a year. Sign these divorce papers. You get money, I get money. We go about our time." So we learn that Margot has hired this man to be Lainey's dream man.
I thought it was interesting because, Margot really thought this all the way through, right? She's really spent a lot of time and a lot of money doing this. Then otherwise, because it seems like Margot is successful otherwise outside of Lainey. Why wouldn't Margot just like drop Lainey? Be like, yeah, I'm just not gonna bother matchmaking you anymore. Instead of spending probably millions of dollars giving this
Yeah,
guy a backstory, giving him cosmetic procedures to really play
yeah.
this con over on Lainey. This is a legit a con. And also it's like, why wouldn't you just tell this guy, listen, Dennis from New Jersey, I'm just gonna hook you up with this millionaire and you'll live a lavish life of luxury and you'll be good to go. Instead of doing this whole convoluted scheme of like, we're gonna have you married for a year, you're gonna get out with some money. I think if you just said this dude like, listen, I'm gonna fix you up and I'm gonna get you with this millionaire, and you just live like that for the rest of your life. I think you probably would have been happy with that. But she went a little too far with it. She's like, I'm gonna have this whole Ocean's 11 scheme of like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you in, and then you're gonna disappear, and you're gonna walk out on her with along with some money.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good plan. I was like, oh, interesting. I wonder how many other times she's done this. But Gabriel Dennis did not like this plan because he has fallen in love with Lainey and wants to be his true self in front of her. And this is where Margot's like, no, you're going to hurt my business. I cannot allow this. So I'm going to use what I used a year ago and I'm going to whack you over the head with something. And then you're going to die on a carpet.
Yeah, that was interesting. It wasn't, we've had a mix of like premeditated and crime of a moment type of thing. This is more of a crime of a moment. Like this wasn't premeditated. It was like, let me hit you with this thing, and then, but after that, she kind of got rid of the body in a expert way. Interesting how
Oh,
she did that.
yeah. She was like, "Oh, you're on the rug? Okay, let me take this rug and put it on a cart and wheel you down this long boardwalk to the ocean and then dump you in the ocean and also throw the murder weapon, which was a Cupid statue, into the ocean as well. But she kept the rug and she burned it in the fireplace, we learn later. And
And
a
just
rug.
wrap him in the rug and throw
Yeah, and toss
the
them.
whole kit and
Yeah.
caboodle in there. I don't know. It was weird.
So back at the police station, this case actually gets assigned, not case, it was kind of like, I'm asking you to do a favor. Captain Wagner goes and talks to Kaya and says, hey, you know, this guy is missing. He's the husband of one of the big donors to my wife's foundation. Could you, like if I send you and Elsbeth the consent decree lawyer, which first of all, if anyone came up to me and said, hi, I'm investigating, I'm a consent decree lawyer, I would not know what you were saying. Like I don't know what clout he thinks this is bringing, but apparently this is a big deal.
But I also thought it was interesting that Wagner chose to send Elsbeth on this very high-profile case that means a lot to him personally, which tells me that he's observing that Elsbeth is like good at this. Like, if you want a case solved, put
Yeah.
Elsbeth on it.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting change in Wagner's type of thought process about Elsbeth, because at first Elsbeth was just a big annoyance to him, and now he's coming along to the idea of like, Elsbeth's pretty good at this. If I want something solved, I'll put Elsbeth on it instead of one of my highly trained detectives or police officers. I'll put this lawyer on it because she's so much better at this job than any of the people that we have hired here on the staff.
I'm gonna use his resources
Yeah.
wisely for
And if you meet a consent decree lawyer and you're like, hey, consent decree lawyer, what are you here for? She's like, oh, well, I'm just here because this police department does such a bad job
yeah.
of solving cases that I have to babysit them.
I know. Yeah. So they head out, talk to Lainey, find out that, Gabriel's missing. He would never go missing, but they keep asking, like, do you have any friends? And the only person that comes up in the situation is Margot. So they take a little road trip to the Hamptons. And this is where Elsbeth meets Margot and starts asking all of her questions. She's noticing all of the things. Oh, is that a book? Did you write the book? I did think it was funny that she said, who does the audiobook? Is it Viola Davis? Like, this is how to get away with
Yeah,
murder. Like, I was like, I thought
that's
that was
funny.
funny.
That is hilarious. Do you think that Elsbeth solves the cases too fast? Because it feels like
Yes.
Elsbeth gets to the scene and she has just solved it immediately. She looks at Margot's like, yep, you did it. Like, I already know. I just got to figure out how to prove it now.
Oh, yeah. And there was like one other thing before they get here. I did want to mention that Elsbeth was questioning Lainey about her participation with the foundation, like just out of the blue. And I think that that's something to keep our eyes on as she's throwing out these questions about Captain Wagner in the weirdest moments. And I think that might come into play in a couple episodes. I don't know. It just keeps happening. But yeah,
It kind of comes into play at the end of this episode, which we'll talk about when we get there. But yeah, that's interesting that the foundation is also like on her mind as well, because she knows, that Wagner told her about that Lainey is tied into the foundation. So I think she wants to really also use these cases as a whenever she can as a way to get more info of her. I guess this would be. I guess the foundation is technically her main quest, and everything else is a side quest to kind of get info about that throughout these cases. If I was someone else, they'd be like, "Why is she asking about the foundation? Is something going on with the foundation?" That's a weird thing to bring up at
yeah,
this time when I'm concerned about my missing husband.
yeah, exactly.
Did you
So she
see?
knows,
Do you think the
yeah,
show could have done a little more to show us how Lainey is terrible? Because throughout this whole episode, I was like, I mean, Lainey's eccentric. She doesn't seem that bad. I mean,
she
she
has high
probably
standards.
yeah, she probably curses out a server every now and then, like she was, mad at Margot, but she didn't seem that bad. I wish they would have done a little more and made it a little funnier for us to see, like, why she's so terrible. Just every time we talk to her, I wish she would have done something terrible. Like, oh, yep, we see why she's
Yeah,
hard to get along with.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we got more from the fake housewives ladies than we
Mhm.
did
Yeah.
from Lainey in this episode. So Elsbeth is noticing all of the rug is missing. It doesn't smell like wood in the fire. We find out that Margot does tell them that Gabriel stopped by to tell her about the fight. We do find out that Elsbeth is from Peoria, Illinois. And I know earlier I said it was an hour and a half away, but that was from where I went to college. It's like 3 hours away from the city of Chicago. And really the only place millennials can afford to buy homes in the state of Illinois. There's
Uh,
this lady on TikTok that like literally shows you homes in Peoria, has built a community getting people to move to
wow.
Peoria, Illinois because they can afford housing. So
And for those that don't know, Marissa is a Chicago resident, so
I am in Chicago.
she's out of what she speaks.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yeah. I'm from Chicago. But I thought that was a fun, little call out. It is not the Hamptons, but we still learned she is looking for an apartment.
Have you
Of
ever been
course,
to Peoria, Marissa?
I have been to Peoria.
How did you find it there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like
It's a place.
it's the place. It's definitely more of like a collegey, small town type thing. But I haven't been since the TikTok lady was like revitalizing the community. So I don't know. It could have its own vibe there. I might need to take a little my own investigative journey and report back.
Did you meet a lot of Elsbeths when you were partying in Peoria?
I mean, Elsbeth and I party similarly, so it's got good Italian food. It's good. It's good.
I mean, it sounds like Mercer doesn't want to offend our hundreds of Peoria, Illinois listeners, but I think you get the gist.
Yeah, I can just like Google it. So they ask for footage, which I was like, duh. Of
Yeah.
course, this lady has footage. They don't necessarily see much, but they do end up finding the car by a bus stop. And this is like a huge thing because Lainey does not believe that her husband would have taken a bus, public transportation. Odd.
Yeah, the security footage was weird because that's the only place we can see what Gabriel was doing while he was at your house. It's a very odd angle that
Yeah.
goes to the driveway. And I could see if she was premeditating this murder, why she would move cameras beforehand, but we couldn't see anything else. It was just, like there was no other footage we could see of Gabriel. I thought that was lacking. Just like, oh, that's it. We don't see Gabriel getting in his car. Like, how would he get into this car from? And there's no vantage point of that. I thought that was weird.
Well, and it did throw Margot for a little bit of a loop here. Like she was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, security footage." But then we see that she did think about it because she does have the car leaving and the car does end up at a bus stop. So she was thinking through how to clean up more than I gave her credit for, I think at the beginning.
She at least went that far.
Yeah. And while Elsbeth and Kaya are there telling Lainey about the fact that they found this car, masseurs show up and say, like, hey, we're here for your anniversary massage. It was booked yesterday. And so this is like another big something is wrong sign for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was very convenient that those two musicians show up at that exact time to tip Elsbeth off on that. Obviously, if Gabriel booked this massage, he was obviously planning on being there. So yeah, that made a lot of sense. This is very
Yeah.
convenient. And there's a lot of conveniences in Elsbeth's world in this universe here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Back at the police station, Elsbeth is telling Captain Warren about everything that's going on, and we get to meet Captain Warren's wife, played by the lovely Gloria Rubin, who I know from ER back in the day, but I know she's shown up some other places. What are our impressions of? Captain Wagner's wife.
Honestly, I met Claudia and I was like, I don't trust her. I don't trust her at all. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's how she played it or just her vibe. I was like, I don't trust it. Later on, I'll be like, I definitely don't trust it now. But when I first met her, I was like, something's fishy here. Something's odd. Something's weird. And I want to save all my theories I have for like later in the podcast, the end of the podcast. We'll talk about theories about what we think is going on with all that stuff. But I definitely looked sideways at Claudia when I first met her. I was like, she's suspicious.
That Elsbeth attend the gala that she's throwing. Like she's like, you have to come. I don't care if you're not a gala person. I don't care if you don't have a date. Like, make sure you come. Which I mean, fell into Elsbeth's lap for her actual job. So I
Mhm.
was like, just go, Elsbeth. Just
Yeah.
go to the gala, eat some food. It'll be fine. Then we see Elsbeth take her a little bus tour of the Hamptons. And this is where they start playing the song about like it's winter in the summer or something like this. It is a song from the musical Grey Gardens, which is
Mm,
about sisters who live in the Hamptons and they're like recluses
yeah.
in the Hamptons. They don't leave. And this is where I think we're trying to establish some sort of show identity. I have a feeling we're going to hear like show tunes throughout this,
Oh, that's interesting.
mainly because in, we hear this song in the next episode. There's the whole like Broadway singing
Hmm.
restaurant thing happening. And I know, like every other good property, we had, there was like a theme in the good fight. There was always like a explainer about how democracy works and things like that. So I'm waiting for it to find that, and this is my hypothesis. I think we're going to hear a lot of Broadway
Also,
songs.
our first case was based around musicals, so
Yeah.
that's not shocking. There's a lot of musical influence in most of these cases here.
Well, and if we think about who casts, like who's casted on these shows, like specifically the ones prior to this, it was like a lot of Broadway legends have been
Hmm.
in The Good Wife and The Good Fight. So
That
this
makes a lot
is,
of
I think, a
sense.
way to kind of like tie it together. So I'm watching for that. But Elspeth gets on the bus, asks the bus driver, like, hey, have you seen this dude? And he's like, no, he'd take a helicopter. Elspeth really does not like the Hamptons. She's like, oh, that's what makes it worth the drive. You don't have to drive. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. But she ends up going to the antique store where Margot is going to buy her replacement rug, and she finds out that Margot's place was featured in Hampton's Quarterly.
Fancy
And
smooth.
this provides Elspeth with a look into what Margot's house looked like before she met Margot. So this is a big clue for Elspeth. And speaking of Margot, she's there walking around with like fireplace cleaner.
Just toting it around in her bag on the outside pocket. You happen to have fireplace cleaner there. I mean, that's just one of the things where you're like, okay, show you're doing a little too much now. You're just like,
Yeah,
let's just put some fireplace cleaner, and that Elsbeth notices like, who walks around with fireplace cleaner? That makes no sense. I was like,
yeah,
it was just another convenient thing to throw in there. Like, let's give this bone to Elsbeth that makes really no sense in the real world sense to like that to have in your bag. So yeah, that threw me off as well.
yeah. This is where Elspeth tells Margot, like, hey, I think a formal investigation is imminent. This is a classic Elsbeth move when she
Mhm.
has a suspect that she wants to kind of rattle. She'll say, like, hey, I think something's going to happen, or they may charge the person with murder, or something like that. So it works and gets Margot to be like, hey, let's go take a walk. Like,
Mhm.
let's get out of here. They talk a little bit about Elsbeth's dating life. We learn that Margot can be seen by others as a simple person, but there's a lot actually going on inside of her, and I would like to know what is going on inside of her a little bit more, as opposed to just seeing her eccentricity and her quirks coming out. I'd like to know like what's really in there, you know?
Yeah, that was interesting. She threw in there about lawyers liking to have sex on their desk. I was like, oh, okay, Ellsworth, see a different side of you here. That's an interesting side to see.
Until it's too late.
Whoa,
Um, I also liked the fisherman with the fish.
is that a red flag? Just for dating
For
sites?
me
Like,
personally, yes. I
anyway.
am not like a fisher person. Like I'm
Mhm.
not into it in general, but there is like an epidemic of men's
An
pull
epidemic.
like yeah, it's like a thing. And so the fact
What's
that they
Where it's on there most? Men with fish or men with dogs?
Fish over
Yeah.
dogs, all the
Wow.
time, and it's always like, look at this fish, look at this fish I caught.
I'm a sporty outdoor rugged man. Look at me. I have no problem touching this slimy fish. You'll never see me on any type of app with any hold any type of fish because that's gross. I don't fish. I don't like fishing. I fished when I was younger and was creeped the heck out by it, by the live worms, by the slimy fish. So you won't see me on any app with any fish. That's just not something I would do. But I guess for guys, it would be interesting to see the psychology behind that. Like, hey, look at this fish.
Yeah,
I'm a really manly rugged man. I like to fish. I like to touch. I have no problem touching. Hey, ladies, I got no problem touching that slimy stuff. You know what I'm saying?
I just feel like that was the call. Like, I think that was there on purpose because Elspeth also says to the fisher, like, "There's nothing like catching a big fish, huh?" Like, I just like this is great. If this is what it was, I applaud you. If not, I still found joy out of it. So when Elspeth returns to the precinct, she's like saying that none of the bus drivers have, saw Gabriel, but that's okay because they found the body, and they found the body in the ocean.
I didn't think we were going to get our detective of the week, and then
Oh,
the detective from whatever county the Hamptons are in,
Cogs County, something like
Safford,
that.
Saggard, something, whatever county, just comes in and is like, "Hey, found his body. We got him." I was like, "Okay, here's our detective of the week," who didn't really play that big of a role that our other detectives have played, as far as being very skeptical of Elsbeth and being like, "No way, I got this is my case. I got this."
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because it did show like communicating with someone outside of the precinct. So I was like, oh, are they? Who's going to show up on this video wall in her new
Hmm.
office? Like,
Yeah.
who are we going to see here? Is Carrie going to show up there? I don't know. I think it was just showing us how that can work in the show. But yeah, they found this body in the ocean. Death Cause of death was blunt force trauma by a brass sculpture. And we also learned that his name isn't Gabriel. His name is Dennis from New Jersey.
I love the through line of this episode where they're just taking a lot of bunch of craps on New Jersey. I'm a big Hamilton fan, and like I remember like everything's legal in New Jersey. Like, so
Yeah.
we've been crapping on New Jersey for years. I just love the way that I think Lainey talks about how he's from New Jersey. Like, that was probably his biggest secret, is he was from New Jersey. I never would have gotten with a guy from New Jersey. But I just love how they were kind of taking shots at New Jersey throughout this whole thing.
I just have to say, I do know people in New Jersey and they're lovely people, but also it is a thing to make fun of New Jersey.
Yeah, for our hundreds of Jerseyans, we're not making fun of you. We just are. I'm just
It,
noting that
I
media
mean,
likes
people make fun
to.
of Chicago all the time too, so like I
Yeah,
get it.
the people like to take shots at New Jersey. Don't take offense.
Yes, yes. Oh, we also learned not only was his name Dennis from New Jersey, that's his official name, Dennis from New Jersey.
Yeah.
We learn that he had a girlfriend
Mm.
for 14 years. And so Kaya and Elsbeth go to question her. And the story that Dennis from New Jersey told this woman was like, I'm a driver for this rich lady and I need to live with her for a year. And then also, P.S., by the way, I'm going to leave you for her because I fell in love with her.
It's like, you didn't see that as suspicious at all. Dennis's girlfriend. Well, they didn't really give her a name. Like Dennis's
No, I
girlfriend. Like,
know.
you didn't find it suspicious at all. Like, okay, you could probably have a job with the other detectives in this precinct because you don't seem very so hyper aware of things. But I thought it was interesting because the story we got is that Dennis all of a sudden now is in love with Lainey and he wants to be with her now. But girlfriend says that, everything was fine up until a week ago. So this is apparently a very recent epiphany for Dennis that he wanted to be with Lainey.
I mean, I know there are people that have to have long distance relationships due to capitalism. Like,
Mhm.
I understand. However, this was a 14-year relationship. And if someone after 13 years with me it was like, hey, I have to go live a year away, I'd be like, maybe we need to have a conversation about something. Like, this, it's not just like, hey, we started dating and he got this job opportunity and something like that. This was a very well established relationship. So I feel like, I don't know, my red flag would have gone up a little bit early, but that might speak a lot about my dating history in the past.
I mean,
But
listen, if you're still a girlfriend after 14 years, I mean,
That's true. There's some trust there, I suppose.
Yeah, very off and on.
So we also learn from the girlfriend that there's a huge filing cabinet. They start going through it as Kaya and Elsbeth are known to do. They find a bunch of receipts for cosmetic surgery and everything, but then they also find this note from Lainey saying, "If you ever leave me, I'll kill you." And this is like totally out of nowhere.
And it doesn't get that followed up on either.
No,
I almost thought, is this Margot? Did Margot frame Lainey? And is she going to frame Lainey? But they didn't get around to that. They just kind of use this as a smoking gun to put it on Lainey at this point. We don't really hear from Lainey why she wrote this note, what her thought process was of writing the note, or anything like that. So I thought it was very kind of like, I don't know, it was sloppy in a way. They didn't really touch up on this very much.
yeah, it was like they found the note. Elsbeth makes a frowny face, and that was it.
Yeah.
So we learn from the detective that Margot has a record. So this is when we learn that Margot was in jail at the same time as Dennis from New Jersey. And this is what kind of opens up the whole case for Elsbeth and Kaya. They're like, oh, they were
And
in
they
jail
mentioned,
together.
yeah, they mentioned there was a rug fiber in the fireplace, and it's like, oh,
Yes,
Elspeth's like tick, 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 putting it all together. She gets one of those light bulb epiphany moments that these type of characters always seem to get midway to three quarters of the episode. It's like, I solved it. Like I've got it. I just got to put it all together.
so then they go back like that's what I kind of found a little tiring about this episode. It was like precinct Hamptons. Could you not call Margot? Like
Yeah,
we had to go to Margot's house and say, like lay everything out. And I thought it was really interesting because Margot was like, I might have committed fraud, but you can't corroborate it because the guy is dead and fraud isn't murder. And I was like, whoa, we're getting real confident here, Margot. Like you are
yeah.
confessing to some things.
And it's like you literally just admitted to fraud, so we could just take you in for fraud.
Yeah,
Like, Al Capone didn't go by being a gangster, he went by tax evasion. So I mean, if we can get you, we can get you. Like, but she was kind of all out with it. Like, you can't. When someone says you can't prove that I murdered this man, I'm like, oh, so you definitely murdered him.
for
Like,
sure.
we just gotta go find the evidence of it. But you definitely murdered him. But you said you can't find proof of it, which means you probably did it.
Yeah.
That should be
And
admissible in
while
court, by the way. Like, we should change the law system. Like, listen, Your Honor, she said you can't prove it, so obviously she did it. Boom, throw the book at him, take him to jail.
run for office, make it happen, Jason.
Hey, I'm running that platform. If anyone wants to come with me, let me know.
While they're visiting Margot this time around, this is when Elsbeth notices that the Cupid is gone. They end up talking to Lacey, where Lacey tells them, like, hey, I bought that for her, but it was not bronze, it was brass because it was $35 and not super expensive. And this is what gets Elsbeth to be like, oh, brass? Well, there was a piece of brass in Dennis from New Jersey's head when he was thrown into the ocean. Obviously, Margot did it.
The Cupid thing is one of the dumbest, like, smoking guns to ever
Three
be.
arrows. Three arrows in the quiver, Jason.
But then it's like, you're using this magazine from whoever knows how long ago, and you're saying you had a Cupid, now it's gone. She's like, I don't know, I threw it away. I didn't like it.
No, she's like, it's in storage. And then later, when Margot calls Elsbeth over, she's like, you liked it so much, I brought it out of storage.
Margaret went the extra step, and that's what got her caught. She just should have been like, "Yeah, I just didn't like it, so I changed my design scheme and threw it away." Not, I have to go get another one to make this, to prove that I still have this statue. Like, that was just a step too far.
Yeah, I agree. We could have totally dropped the whole. All we needed to know was that Lainey bought her the Cupid. We did not need to see Margot like trying to go. Like Margot's already done enough suspicious things, in my
Yeah,
opinion, that we did not need to see her try to go replace it. Everything else. And then this is where the case just kind of like ends. Like Margot calls Elizabeth over to say, like, hey, I found you a man. It's the same guy she tried to pass off on Lainey at the
yep.
beginning of the episode. And this is where Elsbeth notices that the Cupid has two arrows instead of three in the quiver and this whole thing. And this is all a big setup for Margot because Elsbeth has already called her her newfound friends, the fishermen, who have found the original murder weapon in the ocean, and the cops are there to arrest Margot and take her away.
It was so tidy. He pretends to bump into the thing so she can feel the weight of it and be like, oh, yep, this is actually bronze, so much heavier than brass. So this is obviously not your original. So we have enough evidence to take you in now. Call the fisherman in, and guess who's right behind the fisherman? The cops. Like, how much time is left in this episode? And then I guess we need to save some time to get us to our B
The
story,
gala.
to the
Yeah.
gala.
So, what do we learn from this gala situation? We learned Kaya's getting credit for the case. Well, first of all, Kaya came to the gala, which was a big
Mhm.
deal.
Looking,
She's getting credit for the
looking,
case.
looking fire, by the way.
Yeah, it was.
I
She
love,
was.
and this is the second time we've seen Kaya transform from cop Kaya to casual Kaya, and it's like two very different Kayas. I'm like, it's like you was hiding all that under that cop uniform, Kaya. Damn, Kaya. Okay, I see you, Kaya. I see you.
She's enjoying herself because she gets to talk to the detectives and network and schmooze.
But it's like, Kaya, tell us all the stuff you did.
Nothing.
I
I
looked,
drove Elsbeth to the Hamptons.
I looked through some files, and like, I was next to Elsbeth as she was solving the case.
I
That's why,
found out that they were in jail at the same time.
yeah, boom, got him. It's just, I was like, we were trying to build up Kaya's resume, which I felt like we were doing early in the episode when Wagner is like, go with Elsbeth on this high profile case, and he'll talk to her later about the next episode. I'm like, hey, you got the makings of a detective. To build her up this much and then just not let her do much was an odd
Yeah.
choice to me.
Yeah. Agreed. But the real reason Elsbeth is there is so that she can observe and see what's going on with this foundation. So we see that like Wagner really is the schmoozer. Like
Mhm.
he's the one bringing in the donors, talking to people. Claudia, his wife, is just kind of around there. She's doing her part, but not necessarily as much as Captain Wagner. And we see Captain Wagner talking to the CEO of Flair All. This to me has what's that browser that I always forget from the other
Chum Hum.
shows? Chum Hum. This has Chum Hum written all over it for me. Like I think like Flair All is going to be involved in whatever she's there.
Yeah, I think I said that name in one of the earlier episodes, and I think I'd heard that name before in one or two of the earlier episodes.
Yeah. So the guy has shown up, and then first of all, she drinks Shirley Temples, which is just
So
a way
cute.
to my heart. Of course, she gets a phone call from what's his face in Chicago saying, "Hey, there's a gala." She's like, "Yeah, I'm already here," and she didn't really find out anything at the gala. But Wagner did find out a lot about her because later, right before going to bed, Claudia's like, "Hey, I like that Elsbeth lady. She asks a lot of questions." And he's like, "Yeah, that's classic Elsbeth. When she's on a case looking for her
Mhm.
prey."
I love the face he
So,
made. He's like, wait a minute. She hugged me? What? But the fact that when Claudia's getting into bed, she's like, yeah, I like that Elsbeth, but she asks a lot of questions. I was like, Claudia,
mhm.
I'm definitely side eyeing you still, Claudia. It's just a vibe I get from Claudia where we're gonna find out that she's deep into this with Wag.
Flair all thing.
She's deep in
Yeah.
it, I think. Uh,
I'm guessing there's some sort of like sweatshop working something
mhm.
happening
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, I'll talk more about it too after this episode because I think we get more insight into
Yes, we
the
get some more
end
stuff.
of episode 5.
Yeah, so that was episode 4. In episode 5, this is all about tennis. It's called Ball Girl. We have a tennis character by the name of Yo Yo. He is retiring and playing in basically this universe's version of the US Open. We find out that Hunter is the young prodigy being coached by his dad. I don't think we ever got a name for Blair
Uh,
Underwood. Not that Blair Underwood needs a name, but like,
we got it. It was Cliff, but they
oh,
they used the name a total of I think 3 times in the whole episode. That's one of the problems I'm having because like three-fourths of the episode, but in my notes, I'm just going Blair Underwood, Blair Underwood, Blair Underwood.
yeah,
And then because I'm looking for the name, and then they finally say the name, I'm like, okay, his name is Cliff. But every other note in my stuff is like Blair Underwood because I still have no idea what this man's name is. Blair Underwood did this. Blair Underwood said that. So it's a thing in all of these like episodes. They're not really taking time to really introduce us to these people's names because I'm always like,
yeah.
this person did this, and then I get a name and backfill with their name. But yeah, we got it. It just was not a it was not focused. It's like, hey, this guy's name is Cliff, something, something. He's like, oh, by the way, Cliff said this. Like, okay, so his name is Cliff. Got it.
He will always be Blair Underwood, and he did not age. He looks
Hey,
good.
hey, like they say, black don't crack.
Yeah, yeah. But we learned that so Cliff is playing basically the tennis dad, like the
Mhm.
stereotypical tennis dad in the situation. He used to be a pro tennis player. He wants his son to get the success he never really got, so much that he's like talking to his son Hunter in not the best ways.
He's doing his
Uh,
best impression of Venus and Serena's
Serena's
dad,
dad, yeah.
King Richard.
And he knows that Hunter is nervous about playing yo-yo in this tournament because of what has happened in the past. It wasn't a good match. Hunter's only beat yo-yo once. The other times have been some pretty strong defeats on yo-yo side. So this is an opportunity for dad to make things better. And I don't know. Okay, let's talk this through because this was like insane to me. He's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm first of all going to buy a towel from the gift shop, and
Mhm.
then I'm going to bring it home, and I'm going to take nitroglycerin from my dead wife's medicine cabinet and put it all over this towel. That's step one.
Yes.
Step two is I'm going to hang out creepily in the hallway and distract the person bringing the towels to the court and replace this one towel on a cart full of many other towels
And hope it lands
to
in the
be
right spot. Or
brought
the
to court.
with all the dried up nitroglycerin that I put the night before, and hope
Yes.
that that works, that it still activates when he puts it on his sweaty body, I guess, and just really try to manipulate this so hard that I make sure. So, I mean, he does the thing where he makes sure his son gets on the side he wants.
Yep.
That's how he's gonna try and finesse this. He's like, "I wanna make sure you're on this one side because I know the exact placement of the towel on the cart that will correspond to what side the towel goes
It
on,
was so
because I have
weird to
observed
me.
enough to know that when the towel person puts it on the far left-hand side, it's gonna go on this side." Yes, it makes no sense, but I think we're just supposed to kinda, like I think with Elsbeth, with a lot of it, I think it's jarring because it feels like Good Wife, Good Fight are very specific and very careful with story beats.
Hmm.
Elsbeth feels like we're really supposed to suspend a lot of belief. We're supposed to just be like, I feel like the creator's just like, no, 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 just go with it, just go with it. Don't think about it too much, just go with it. But I think we've been trained to think about it, so we're thinking about it a lot.
Not think about it if I had some other storyline or more
Mhm.
things about Elsbeth to kind of fill in those gaps.
Yeah,
Like I never asked myself, did Elsbeth play tennis? You know what I mean?
yeah,
The, there's nothing. I need some more. But yeah, so Coach Dad Cliff finagles it so the one towel is in the right place, and Hunter is winning this match pretty much
Mhm.
until it is time for Yo to use the towel. And he uses the towel. He's a little off balance a little bit, but then he just straight up dies on the court. Like,
Yeah.
I'm done.
So
In
what?
front of everybody.
So just putting the nitroglycerin on was supposed to do what exactly?
So nitroglycerin messes with your heart rhythm
Right.
and your heart. So it can help people with congenitive heart. It can
Yeah.
help
He
regulate your. So he just wanted to kind of not have Yo-Yo be on his game. He
okay.
didn't want Yo-Yo to pass out. He just kind of wanted to throw Yo-Yo for a little bit of a loop because it's not like he ingested nitroglycerin.
Right.
He just put it on
It was
topically. It was
topical.
going to take time to get in there, but we learned later that it was the chemical reaction of this and another medication that actually ended up killing Yo Yo. This was Cliff's plan from the beginning because Hunter's sitting in the poor locker room. He's like, oh my gosh, dad, like, he's dead. He died. And Cliff is like, it was a mistake. So
That wasn't
this was
supposed
a
to happen. He literally says that. It
this,
wasn't supposed to happen that way. What do
yeah.
you mean that way? Like, what do you mean that way?
Yeah. We see Elsbeth is taking Kaya on the tour of tourist New York, and this is where she is in her singing diner situation. But again, Elsbeth is asking Kaya about Wally and Captain Wagner without any prompting. It's just
Mhm.
like, hey, I'll have the burger. And also, what about that Wally? Has Captain Wagner ever mentioned Wally?
You might as well just be like, have you seen Captain Wagner do anything illegal lately?
Yeah, it just, ah, do
You think
better
Captain
than this.
Wagner's a villain? What do you think? Well, I'll just be telling her, hey, I came here to investigate Captain Wagner. Have you seen anything weird?
Yeah. Yeah. They get the news at the diner. They get put on the case. The detective is the same detective from Detective or episode
Yep.
one. So we are seeing our first repeat detective at this point.
Who again does nothing much but
Nothing.
just like wags his finger at Elsbeth, like, man, I don't think that's true. Like, it's an open and shut case. Let me do my job. And then Elsbeth like basically takes him to school, like, no, dummy, this is the way
Yeah.
it's actually supposed to be, which is just, I'll say it again, it's just not a good look for this police department that Elsbeth is coming in and schooling all of them. I want the police department to get some wins so they don't look like they're totally inept all of the time.
I am okay with making fun of the cops that I am
Yes,
saying
of
on a
course.
recorded thing. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to believe these people are even
Yeah.
in the force to begin with. I have to give them some credit, especially at the detective level, that they know how to interrogate someone and ask the right questions.
Gonna go with the easiest, laziest answer every time.
Yeah, like the Russians. So the detective goes and brings Elsbeth, of course, to it's a high profile case. We need the consent decree lawyer there. But Cliff is like, yeah, nothing suspicious happened. There was a pretty girl with him. If it's anyone, it's the Russians because Yo-Yo was outspoken about the war. So the Russians, this is what happens. And
Which
the
again,
detective is like, yeah,
is
but they,
Russians. But again,
yeah,
it's really convenient because I don't think Cliff even knows that Yo-Yo's girlfriend was actually Russian. That just kind of
no,
falls together
yeah.
for Cliff. But just like, you know who it was? It was those dang Russians. The Russians, for some reason, care about Yo-Yo and wants to assassinate him.
I do appreciate that later in this episode, Elsbeth is like the Russians are better than that. They're not sloppy. Like this does not say Russians did this at all. But whatever. We see Cliff. This is where Cliff meets Ashley. Ashley had seen the whole like towel replacement thing happen. So she did go pick up the towel after Yo Yo used it and runs into Cliff in the hallway. This is where she's trying to like do a little shakedown. She's
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
hey, I know what you did. I got the receipts, bruh. Like,
Ooh.
got
Oh
the
man.
receipts. We can make a lot of money if we want to keep doing this. We can bet on Hunter, and I'll share with you. And he's like, "You look more guilty than I do at this point," which she is right because she has already gained on a bet from this match. And he's like, "Don't worry about it. The Russians."
I already got the cops with the Russians anyway, so we don't got to worry about, being fingered for this. It's definitely got him on the
Oh,
Russians because I'm so suave and so cool with it. I got him on the Russians. Even when he bumps to Ellsworth later, he's like, "But what about the Russians?"
yeah, the Russians.
Bro, it was never the Russians. We were never thinking about the Russians, my guy.
Then this is the part of the episode where we learn a little bit more about Captain Wagner and how he handles business. So the first thing he does is he stops by Kaya's desk and is like, "Hey, how's it going? How's it going with Elsbeth? You know, Elsbeth's only here a year, but you have a bright future in this force. Like you can go for the long haul." Has Elsbeth mentioned anything weird?
These people are the most unsubtle people you ever met. Have you told you anything about investigating me any type of
Yeah,
way? Just check
anything?
in.
Kaya does remember Wally, and so she does mention that. Wagner's response to trying to befriend Elsbeth is to have this elaborate sushi lunch. It's like, hey, you know, you've been here for so long, we haven't connected on a personal level. So let's have the sushi lunch. And I'm going to microwave the towels. And I'm going to do all of this. But we learn that Captain Wagner also loves being in the field. He doesn't necessarily like being an administrator, but it was when he was offered this promotion, he did it because Claudia deserved prestige. And so this is where I was like, oh, I don't think Wagner's a bad guy. I think he's messed up in some things because of something that Claudia did. Even though
Yeah.
I hate to see Gloria Rubin go down, I love her.
Yeah, again, Claudia. Why does Claudia deserve prestige? I don't know, but Claudia seems so reserved and so like a politician in a way. I was like, she's definitely, as the writers of Elsbeth would say, she's definitely sus.
We're
But
gonna let her cook though.
yeah, it was. We're gonna let her cook. It was definitely that moment where he mentions Claudia. Like Claudia's getting mentioned so much now. I'm like, Claudia's definitely in this some type of way.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I think Elsbeth will help the captain get out of the situation in the long run. I don't know when that's going to happen, but she will befriend him. She likes the situation. And also, Elsbeth tells Captain Wagner that his her son does not like his job. He works at a nonprofit in DC, and so Wagner's going to do something with that information later. But yeah, he heats up these towels, and this is what gets Elsbeth. It's like, oh, warm towel. Let me put the towel on me. Oh, I was watching the match. Obviously, Yo-Yo used a towel.
Yep.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Light
This is
bulb.
done.
Light bulb Eureka moment.
Yeah. And then they're like, how are we going to find it? And the episode's like, here, let me show you. Ashley's going to plant it on the girlfriend. What did you think of Ashley's plan to get it in the hotel room?
I think it's really terrible because of what exactly happens after this. That we basically see from surveillance cameras Ashley planting the towel and doing what she was doing. You didn't really think this through because obviously the girlfriend's going to say, I didn't put that towel in my room. Who put the towel in my room? And oh, we're going to follow the towel basically from when it was placed to who placed it and where and when. So, not a good idea from Ashley, but I do like that Ashley didn't get away with it for long. I like that she was found
Yeah.
out very easily in that way. So I mean, in that way, we can say that that's kind of a win for the New York Police Department. They were able to suss out Ashley's role in this.
They
Um,
were able to use very obvious
yeah,
surveillance footage and put two and two together. Yes,
yes. So
this
we
did
can say
happen.
that for the New York cops, but not a great idea on Ashley's part. I think Ashley has ambitious ideas. She's just not a great executor.
Yeah, I mean, she's like an entrepreneurial criminal.
Yeah.
Like she's
Honestly,
just getting started.
I wouldn't be mad if we got like Ashley on a recurring basis.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah, for some
Yeah.
reason, because I did like her quirkiness, I did like her attitude. You know, she kind of reminded me of Marissa. Well, I mean,
Yes.
not the Marissa that's here with me
Yes.
on the call, but Marissa Gold from our Goodiverse. Very sassy, quirky, a young person basically that's going to get into mischief. So it reminded me of Marissa there. So I wouldn't be mad if we saw her again.
I will confess that half the reason why I watched The Good Wife and The Good Fight is because there was a character named Marissa with two S's, like how I spell my name, and I never really see representation like that in media.
Oh,
It was
you were seen.
bad.
Seen.
I never got one of those license plates for my bike that had my name spelled right. Like I was just like, oh, finally, I get a
You had
character.
to add the second S with a Sharpie in between the S and the A. Real thin.
It was a moment. But we learn about the girlfriend. So the girlfriend basically is, caught with the towel in her room. So they bring her in, they read her bio. She's apparently a mermaid, which I thought was funny.
Cute.
Like throws that in there. But this is where we learn, like, hey, Yo-Yo doesn't like aging, and he definitely needed some help in the bedroom department. So I didn't give him anything that would kill him, but I did give him something.
Yep.
And this is where the interaction between those drugs and the nitroglycerin
Listen,
combine.
very important for my notes. I said, okay, no ED medication while I'm taking my heart medication.
Yeah.
Save that one for my personal notes.
Talk
Yeah.
to your doctor, make sure it's good. And because basically, they're both messing with your heart. Like
Mhm.
both of those medicines are
Overexerting
messing with
you.
your heart. Cliff finds Ashley in the hallway again because he's like, oh my gosh, like, this is what's going on. And she's like, I'm done. I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with this.
Tell me that 50-year-olds write this show without telling
Yeah,
me that 50-year-olds write this show.
it was funny. Things between Hunter and Cliff are not going well. Hunter doesn't want to practice. He's basically saying, I'm the reason why we're successful, not you, dad. Typical parent coach type of
Mhm.
things going on. But Elsbeth shows up for her lesson that was promised a while ago. Classic Elsbeth. She's like, I think there's a second drugger. I wonder who it could be. And all of a sudden, Cliff's like, gotta go.
Yeah. I'm going to go cover my tracks. I'll see you later. 'Cause I'm about to go cover my tracks. You just told me that I should be on the lookout.
Yeah, and she does the thing that many crime shows will do, where it's like, and we know as parents, we would do anything for our children. And I was like, Elspeth, where is this coming from? Elsbeth does not leave right away, though. She goes and talks to Hunter. And this is where she learns that Hunter's mom, who we learned had passed away earlier in the episode, did not die from cancer, but did die from a bad heart. Jason.
I liked how Hunter was like, yeah, people talk about moms dying early and they just assume it's cancer. I think of like a sports star's parent died. We would get the cause of death. We wouldn't just all go up, must have been cancer, and just ignore everything else.
The thing is we would get it if we were meant to get it. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like, so it's we're not entitled to even know at
And we
this
wouldn't
point.
assume.
Like,
We
the
wouldn't
lady
assume.
died.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
wouldn't assume it was must have been cancer. No, we would just be like, I mean, we don't know for sure. We can theorize, but we just wouldn't be like, it's cancer and like report it in the news.
Yeah. This is where light bulb moment for Elsbeth. Oh my gosh, heart trouble, nitroglycerin, towel. So she runs back to the police department. It's like, here's my towel theory. And they're like, great, I'm on it. But also, we got Ashley here
Yeah, we
for
can't
the
just let
situation.
Ashley go. We can't. We now have Ashley, so there's that.
And then Elspeth somehow puts together that like he had to be on the right side of the court, so she has to find out about the coin toss. Basically, finds them after a press conference and asks. And this is where Cliff is like, "I'm done. Like, I'm.
Mhm.
If you're going to ask me any more questions, you have to ask my lawyer." But in doing so, he basically told and showed Hunter that he lied because we know that Cliff's advice to Hunter was to pick a side, not to choose to serve or
Which is
receive.
very abnormal. So that it stayed in Hunter's mind. It's
Yeah.
weird that she would just pick a side instead of choosing to serve. It's almost like I relate everything in my life to football. So it's like winning the coin toss and not choosing to receive or kick off the ball. Yeah,
Choose your
it's
goal.
right. It's very odd. So that's stuck in Hunter's mind. So when Cliff lies to Elsbeth and says, "Well, Hunter just would have picked to serve
Serves.
if he won the coin toss," that's Hunter's light bulb moment for him as well.
Yes. So much so that he goes home, opens the one drawer. He doesn't even like, it's not an investigation. It's just like, whoop, here's
And
the nitroglycerin.
And only like, did he see the nitroglycerin before that it wasn't used? Like he's just looking at this used thing of nitroglycerin, going, "Up, my dad's a murderer." Like, what if it was already used? Like you're just looking at this nitroglycerin that proves nothing. Weird.
And we get a classic Elsbeth trap, basically, in
Mhm.
the situation. She has talked to Hunter, them have a plan, basically trying to put, again, a towel on Hunter's side of the court, brought to him by Ashley. And this is like, gets Cliff is freaking out. He's like, hey,
Yep.
don't touch the towel. And he's like, what? I can't hear you. Why don't you say it? And he's racking up delay of game penalties, which is not great. And because of Cliff's reaction to the towel, Hunter puts two and two together, knows what happens, and withdraws because he does not want to, risk his integrity in this. And Cliff's like, you're throwing away your whole career. And he's like, look at what it did to you. So much trauma, so much stuff. And Ashley also gets arrested at this point as well, but she's okay because she's entering her snitch era.
Not me entering my snitch era. I was like, oh boy. Okay. But I thought it was a good trap, right? Because basically, Ellsworth gets Hunter to plant the idea in Cliff's head that a bunch of people are betting on him to lose. That's the plan. Ellsworth has Hunter
Yeah.
plant that in his dad's head.
Yes.
So his dad thinks that Ashley is setting Hunter up to
Yes.
lose by putting more stuff on the towel. So that gets Cliff to panic, Cliff to tell Hunter, and Hunter's like, "What'd you say, Dad? Say it louder for the police to hear you. What you say? Say it again. Don't touch the towel. What's wrong with the towel, Dad? What's wrong with the towel?" So I thought that was a really impressive way to get into Cliff's head and to make him basically almost confess to the crime himself in a way by calling this out. So that was a fun little trap by Elsbeth.
I also liked how later when Cliff confronts Hunter is like, you did this to your family. He's like, I didn't want to believe that this is what happened.
Mhm.
Like, but how can I deny what happened?
He said, "I didn't think you'd fall for it. Like, damn, if I had known you were the real murderer, maybe I would have covered for you."
And the episode ends with a little bit more about Captain Wagner and Elsbeth because we learn that suddenly Teddy has a new job. He did not like his job, and all of a sudden he has a new job in Washington, D.C. And Captain Wagner is not like, oh, wow, that's so exciting. He's like, oh, interesting. And Elsbeth is very uncomfortable with the fact that Captain Wagner pulled some strings and got Teddy this new job. And he tells her, I think of us as friends, and I'm sure one day you'll do the same for me. And so now Elsbeth is kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah, so that got me like here's what I'm thinking as far as what's going on with Wagner, what's going on with the foundation. I think Wagner's wife is pulling a lot of strings in this devious enterprise. I think she is a mastermind behind this. I think Wagner might suspect something's going on and he's trying to take it down from the inside, I think, is
Ooh.
where he's at with this. Because at first I thought something's going on and Wagner has no idea. But now I'm thinking Wagner might have an idea and is now
Like
trying to
protecting, interfering.
right. He might be investigating on his own on the inside and doesn't want to bring it to anyone yet because he hasn't gotten any proof. But now Elsbeth's going to come in and do whatever she's doing because the fact that he was like when Claudia's asking says, "Oh, she asks a lot of questions." He's like, "Yeah, she only does that when she's hunting someone." And he goes, "Oh my god, she's hunting me." Makes me think he knows something is up. But I just don't see where it's going to be that Wagner is a bad guy. I just don't think that is the case at all.
No, I think Wagner will have to use Elsbeth to unfortunately bring down his wife at some
Yes.
point,
Hmm.
and that will be sad because they do love each other. Like it's like they're happy. I don't really know, like what we've seen, the 2 seconds we've seen
Yeah.
of them together. They're happy and cordial, but I really just want to know more so that we
Hmm.
can see what is going on there. But yeah, I think Elsbeth is Claudia's demise in the long run, and I think Captain Wagner and Elsbeth's minds might work very similarly together because he had mentioned during sushi lunch, like, I really miss being in the field. I liked, solving cases and paying attention to details and stuff like that. So they're going to tag team in some way.
You think there's a world where Wagner gets busted down to detective and he and Wagner, Elsbeth and Kaya all worked together in whatever capacity. They form some task force or something.
Ooh,
Usually
dream team.
these shows usually come up with a task force like idea. You're on this type of task force now. This is your task force. You do this, this, and this. So I think there are a lot of possibilities for what's going to come with this foundation plot, with the Wagner plot. Because it's obvious if Elsbeth likes someone, they're not a bad guy, and Elsbeth seems to like Wagner. So I just don't think Wagner's a bad guy. I think he knows something's fishy going on with his foundation. I don't know if he knows his wife is involved yet, but I think probably what's going to happen is he's investigating the Flare All guy. I forgot the guy's name. Is it was that who is this
Yeah,
Claudia
yeah.
told Elsbeth about? I think he's crooked, and I think Wagner might be trying to investigate him, and maybe through that, Wagner finds out his wife has a lot more to do with it than he thought.
I'm with you. I am glad that we did in these 2 episodes get more on that storyline because
Mhm.
originally it was just like, I'm here for a reason. Don't really know. And I don't think that this stuff that's going on with Wagner might, I don't know. I think there's just more to it. There's definitely like she's there because of police misconduct and also to find out about the foundation. But how are those two things tied together? How does that
I, I
work?
I think probably they use the quote unquote lawsuits the New York Police Department has come. I think they use that as a front to get Elsbeth in the door. So I don't know if that was just
But
use
they
that
have
to
to be
get Elsbeth in
connected,
there.
right?
I think if you get some type of information that Wagner is maybe corrupt, and then you say, "How are we going to get Elsbeth inserted into the police department?" Like, I know. We'll use these lawsuits of misconduct, which I'm sure a, a lot of precincts and police
Yeah.
departments have. And we'll use this excuse to get Elsbeth in the door. I don't know if they would have made this consent decree lawyer a thing if they didn't suspect Wagner or something. Um,
Well, yeah. There had to
so
have been a pattern of misconduct for her to be there.
yeah,
Because I also think that there's a case where Wagner did something corrupt
Mhm.
that was connected to the consent decree, but he did it to protect his wife in some sort of way. I think we'll get there. I don't know if we'll get there in the next 5 episodes or four, but we'll get there
We're getting a little
eventually.
we're getting ramp ups bit by bit. With
Yeah.
we're getting a little more information every episode. So hopefully there'll be an episode that just kind of breaks this thing wide open, and I think the season finale will probably deal with that a lot.
Yeah.
And
So
we'll
those are our
getting
two.
yeah.
If you had to rank these two, I think we said at the beginning 5/4.
Yeah, for sure. I thought 4 was the weakest episode we've gotten so far, so I put that at the very bottom of my all 5 episode rankings, and I would probably put 5 in the higher tier episodes that we've gotten so far. I thought it was good. I thought the addition of Ashley kinda made the episode sing a little bit better than normal. So I would say that, yeah.
Yeah. I hope we see her again.
Yeah, that'd
But
be nice.
that's
Nice.
what we got, yo.
So you wanna give everyone, where they can find you, how they can keep up with what you're
Oh,
doing?
sure. Yeah. If you are interested into what I'm up to these days, you can find me on Instagram and threads at It's Me, Marissa G. I'm doing some writing. I will post about it there. It's pretty much what I've got going on at the moment. But if something pops up, that's where you can find. Jason, what
Yeah,
about you?
you can find me on Twitter at JAYR1085. I have musings about a number of things there, so if you want to follow, go ahead and follow. As far as other podcasts, you can find me every week on the Perfect Match podcast, where me and my co-host Asia Welch talk about the show Married at First Sight. We are actually coming to the end of season 17 next week, so after that we'll be taking a hiatus. But if you have any interest in that show, you can hit the logs, hit the archives, and see and keep up with the season with us. So that's pretty much where you can find me at the moment. I thought about
Yes.
that Elsbeth is more of a investigator, PI sort of type now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna
You
leave.
switching it up?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of use Elsbeth as kind of like a PI, right? I'm gonna say if you need Elsbeth, and we're gonna wrap out on this. Cut the baloney. Call Tassioni.